Who's ready, Bills Mafia? It's the Bills Squad, sponsored by Game Time. Everything Buffalo Bills, every week. Breaking down the big hits and game-changing plays the way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. So gear up and squad up. The Bills Squad show starts now.
And welcome back. The full squad here once again. Locked On Bills, the Bills Squad show. Jeremy White, Joe Marino, and Jerry Ostrowski all here today for you to chat Bills for an hour. We're live on YouTube. You can, of course, check us out anytime on the YouTube feed. You can like and subscribe. You can listen in all the apps where you get your podcasts right as part of the Locked On Bills channel. And we're here twice a week to talk about the Bills. Off-season, mini-camp's done, into training camp, into the season. This thing will get fired up. So happy to have you along once again. We've got lots to get to, including a lot of comments from you, previewing Joe's upcoming one-year wonder episode on the Bills, which we're excited to get to. Matt Bove will check in. He's the sports director, Channel 7 here in Buffalo. He's got a 7-part series looking back on the history of Highmark Stadium. It's airing every Monday. So we'll welcome him in during the show to ask him all about what he's put together, who he's talked to, part of the stadium retrospective. And also start, though, with Tyreek Hill, who's out here name-calling the Bills. Tell you what he said, why he said it, and whether or not the Bills should even be mad about what he said. But first, today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So, gentlemen, welcome back. Good to see you. Tyreek Hill, choice words for the Bills. And, Joe, it's the kind of thing where, it's an insult where a receiver says, "You're lame because you're too good at defending me." Is that what it is? Wasn't much of an insult.
Yeah, I mean, Tyreek Hill comes out and took exception with the Bills' choice to play a lot of cover 4 against the Miami Dolphins, to which I would say it's kind of working. It's kind of working. The Bills have had a lot of success going up against the Miami Dolphins and particularly shutting down that offense, and in particular Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill's a great player in the NFL. He's not been his best against Buffalo. And it's not because the Bills have guys at corner that can turn and run with him, right? It's not because they have athletes that can go step for step. It's because scheme-wise, they run smart schemes that limit the Dolphins. And so good. I think it's good that it's under Tyreek's skin. I also enjoy this type of banter. I don't particularly love like overly bad sportsmanship, but I like rivalries. I like for there to be a little bit of venom between some teams. I really enjoyed last year when Deion Dawkins went in on the Jets. And so I think this stuff is kind of fun. And the social media teams are going to be ready should the Bills handle their business like usual against Miami next year. What is that? Is that week 3?
Yeah, 3 on Thursday night.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that'll make that a little more interesting. And boy, Tyreek Hill, you better go out there and put up some yards, man.
No, I have no problem with it. The difference is nowadays, like Joe said, you got social media teams that put it right out there. It's on Twitter. It's on YouTube, everything you can imagine, right? Back in the day, you had to wait for the ink to hit paper before you saw anything like this. This type of stuff has been going on forever. We had verbal battles like this back in the 90s. I mean, this is what rivalries are about. Probably this comment by Tyreek, to me anyway, is more of an indictment on the rest of his receiver group than it is him. I mean, the Bills obviously running cover 4 to take Tyreek away. Somebody else has to step up and make plays to get them out of it. So really, this is more of an indictment, or Tyreek, through kind of him spitting venom at the Bills, is really getting on the rest of his teammates saying, you got to get yourself open so that they get out of this, so that I can go ahead and get one-on-one matchups and make some plays and do what I do. So, no, this is great. It's just, I love Deion, and like you talked about with the Jets, I would imagine with Vrabel being in the Patriots now, there's going to be some stuff there between the Bills, and that's what this is about. I mean, this isn't a big deal. The just difference is now we get it instantaneously instead of having to wait till tomorrow morning for Vic Carucci to write an article about it. So it's just a little bit different.
I want to get into some of what is in this comment. Whenever we play the Bills, those guys typically play cover 4 because they're a bunch of bleep. And, I did something today. I went back to the start of last year, and there is a bigger Tyreek Hill conversation to have here, guys. And that's that. Don't forget last year, going into the year, he was the NFL's top player voted on by the players. Number one in the NFL top 100 was Tyreek Hill. And week one, he puts up an 80-yard touchdown against the Jaguars. And for the rest of the year, his longest catch was 30 yards. That's it. I can remember during the season kind of thinking back and saying, is the Tyreek Hill era kind of over here where you have to fear him on every play? And the Bills have been doing this. You guys could speak to this like schematically. The Bills have been doing this forever, where they don't let anybody get behind them, where they're keeping things in front. And, you know, the league kind of evolved to be take away the big play, even though it's always there to some degree, but the cover 2 talk, cover 4 in this case, like the Bills were doing this for a long time. And then in the last 2-3 years, it feels like everybody started to go to some version of this shell to protect from the big hitters like Tyreek Hill, because he didn't really get off on anybody. And I think he's mad at the Bills about it.
Well, and I think those split shell coverages, obviously, they're designed to take away the vertical stuff down the field by maintaining vertical leverage, right? And so Tyreek, I think, has had some things working against him. Well, first of all, let's acknowledge that poor choice of words, and actions and behaviors, not always things that Tyreek Hill gets correct. But he also put on some weight, all right? I think he's down like 15 pounds. And he had a pretty bad wrist deal last year that I think kind of took away from his production. And they've been pretty open about, Tyreek Hill and numbers and chasing 2,000 yards. Like, those were important things to Miami, even at the expense of good play calling and winning football games. They kind of force-fed the ball to Tyreek Hill. And I think they were forced to adjust a bit last year. Obviously, Tua goes down. I think they were a 2-6 football team at one point, having to play with their backups a lot. They had injuries all over their defense. And I think in some ways they did find a bit of those opportunities to work the underneath stuff like they did with Jonnu Smith and how he mattered for their offense. In fact, he had more receiving production than Jalen Waddle did last year. Might be a surprise to some people. But they worked in that third piece. We'll see if they have Jonnu Smith this year. There's obviously some unsettled rumblings there about what he's looking for. And he had the greatest season a Miami Dolphins tight end has ever had. And he's aging. He's probably looking at an opportunity to cash in on a big year. He's probably looking for some money. I can understand that. But I think one of the biggest problems that Miami has, against the Bills is game scripts. And the Bills are the boogeyman for the Dolphins, right? Like, they come in, the Bills have had so much success against them, and I don't think they play good ball because the game script tends to get away from them, and they feel like they have to have this shootout with the Bills, where if they would probably just run the football and be willing to play a little defense, they could stay in these games. But they'll be down by a touchdown. They'll make a goofy decision to go for it. And they'll give the ball back to the Bills. Now they're down 2 touchdowns. Now they're one-dimensional on offense, and it falls right into this Bills script that they love. And so they've adapted in some ways. I'm curious. They made some offensive line adjustments this year as well, getting a little bit bigger and more physical, and you think maybe some more inside run as opposed to always trying to attack the edges. So I'm curious to see where it goes. Obviously, the Dolphins and Tua in his health is the number one thing. They got questions all over their defense, particularly in the secondary. But if Tua's healthy, like, they win games with Tua, they'll be a decent team. But if he's going to be injured and then they have to rely more on a defense that has more questions than we've had in a while, it could be a down year for Miami. But if Tua's healthy, I think they'll be decent.
Joe, you kind of touched on a little bit, and the thing that's probably, if there's a good thing out of this situation, Tyreek spitting fire at the Bills as opposed to turning and flipping the script and calling his head coach out, calling the play calling out, calling his quarterback out. Okay, we've seen in the NFL anyway that the quarterback position can cover up a lot of deficiencies. We've lived it in Buffalo, right, with Josh Allen as his team built and got its talent level up. But, it's hard for a receiver to really shine if he doesn't have other players coming with him. And, this is, again, I talked about it earlier. It's more of an indictment to me anyway. And without him saying it, he didn't go at anybody. But, the play calling hasn't been good enough. What is Mike McDaniel doing? Tua, obviously, the injury situations. Everybody else needs to step up their level. So, if there is a positive out of this anyway, he hasn't gone at the throats of his teammates or the organization. He's gone at the rival team in the division. So, no, it's a big year for the Dolphins because we've talked about it on this show before. If they don't get it done, especially offensively, this whole thing's going to get blown up after this season.
thinking about their structure of offense, we're talking a little about the Dolphins here because of Tyreek Hill's comments about the Bills. There was a point where that offense is humming, and Tua had both the fastest average time to throw and also the longest depth of target in the league. Like, they were very good at getting the ball out quick and getting it vertically up the field. And, that's like in the design of an offense. To me, guys, the thing I always thought was going to be their flaw is they don't have a quarterback that's able to take it when, okay, the design didn't work this time. The first read's not there. What are you going to do? That's where I kind of liked seeing Josh Allen improvise. And, Tyreek Hill, he killed the Bills a couple times with the Chiefs. And when he's with that Patrick Mahomes is someone that can buy more time and give more opportunities. More things can happen. In a Dolphins offense, sure, it's a track meet when it's on, but when it's not hitting exactly right, like plan B doesn't really show up all that much in that offense.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Tua is a really good on-schedule quarterback. He's accurate. He makes good, quick decisions. But if he has to process deeper into the snap, that's where the limitations show up, both athletically and with arm talent, right? I mean, he's not going to make you right when you're wrong. He's a good player within structure, and I think they've done a very good job of optimizing everything schematically around him to use his skill set. But, yeah, there's a limitation that comes when the scheme isn't perfect and he has to process deeper into the snap. You see those limitations show up for sure.
Yeah, we see this all the way back to the national championship game when he gets pulled out and they bring in Jalen Hurts, playing against a formidable defense, and maybe things aren't there right away. He struggles. They bring in Hurts. They end up coming back and winning that game. But I think the biggest thing for the Dolphins anywhere where they missed the boat, they missed the train, they've had really, really good talent in the offensive backfield at running back. And I always felt with like A-Chain and the other player that just moved on, they didn't utilize them as well as they should have. I mean, I thought if the offensive line was appropriate, McDaniel put an emphasis on it, they could have run the ball and I think got much more out of their running backs. And if you look at statistics, A-Chain's been good catching the ball out of the backfield, but I think those guys were special running it as well. And I think that would have helped them out a lot if they kind of took a little bit of a blueprint from the Bills and said, let's control the ball a little bit and then get into our passing game.
I'm curious if that's where they go. I mean, they signed James Daniels. They draft Jonas Savianaya. They traded up to get him high in the second round to come in and play guard. They have a lot invested in Jalen Wright in a draft pick from 2 years ago. They have Achane. They drafted Ollie Gordon. They brought in Alexander Madison. And it almost feels like when Sean McVay with the Rams went from this wide zone team to more, hey, we're going to run more duo. We're going to run more inside zone and get downhill a little bit more to complement the rest of our operation. It feels like they're trending in that direction. Now it's just going to come down to, can Mike McDaniel have the discipline to stick with it and live with some dirty runs and not chase the stats? Like, it's been, we want numbers for Tua and Tyreek and Jalen. Like, they've been very honest about that. Can they get away from that and just play smart ball? I think it's going to give them a better chance. And, if they can lean more on the run game, which at times looks really good, I think that helps their passing game. It helps to stay on schedule, helps them stay healthy, and give them a chance to win games.
I think you make a great point. Real quick, Jeremy, I just want to touch on that. There's a lot of offenses out there that thrive in finesse, but there's a handful of times during the season you've got to be physical, especially up front. And physical defenses beat you because you can't match the physicality. They're definitely in that situation in Miami, and that's the same thing that the Rams are in as well in the past. You got to be able to line up and move people at some point during the season.
Yeah, we'll see if Hill can kind of recapture the magic at this point. He's out here running track, challenging U.S. sprinter Noah Lyles to races, which his coach said that's fine as long as it doesn't, bleed into your football prep. And here we are. He's still challenging him online despite running a full half second slower. I wonder if Hill can kind of buck the trend of guys that get older and lose a step. It's not even that he's lost a step. I think you guys make the right point about supporting cast, because he's still a player that defenses are going to plan. Like, all right, listen, here's how we stop this guy from beating us. And if the Dolphins don't have anything else, whether it's they can't run the ball well enough or Jalen Waddle, like the mystery, he kind of disappeared after an incredible start to his career. That 1-2 punch was supposed to be amazing. Like, what does Miami do? What is Miami's offensive identity this year other than just trying to, catch what they had a couple of years ago, which again, we saw a lot of these good defensive coordinators, they had answers that were reasonable to keep them in check.
Yeah, I think it's going to be that inside zone rushing offense with more physical guards, some bigger running backs. I think the Waddle Hill thing will kind of continue. Jonnu Smith, if they keep him around, I think he matters. And then they got Nick Westbrook Akine, a fourth receiver that gives them like a size component, kind of that Trent Sherfield role with more verticality that they had a few years ago. So I think that's kind of where they're headed. They just got to keep Tua healthy. And I think one other point on Tyreek Hill, that dude's also let the team down in some big moments with like big drops, some ball handling issues. That game against Kansas City that was overseas, he wound up having that really goofy before halftime moment, letting go of the ball. Like, he's had his own share of blunders that have taken away from some of the success that Miami could have had over the years as well.
But this is Tyreek. I've been following Tyreek since he was in Stillwater playing for Oklahoma State. I mean, this is vintage Tyreek Hill. He hasn't changed. The guy is the same as he's always been. And if you're going to have him on your team, you're just going to have to live with it. And at some point when it gets tiresome, you move him on. I mean, this isn't anything new for Tyreek Hill.
Bill Squad Show here, streaming live on YouTube, also in your Locked On Bills channels. We'll get a break in. When we get back, we welcome in Matt Bove to talk about the Highmark Stadium farewell tour. Matt's putting together a 7-part series. He's talked to legends, everybody, and a comprehensive series on Highmark as we look back on the history of the stadium and, of course, celebrate one final year in the old building. So it's coming up next here on the Bill Squad Show. Hey, FanDuel, of course, available for you for your summer sports. That's right. FanDuel.com. You can go to FanDuel.com. FanDuel, the best way to make every game even more exciting. You can follow the action. You can follow it with a little thrill. You can go on live betting as well. Baseball, golf, whether it's the pristine green fairways of some of one more major left. You want to do that. Big tournaments still to come, FedEx Cup, all that stuff. When it comes to FanDuel, you can track your favorite matchups for baseball. We've got a lot of soccer going on this summer as well. Easy to use, fast payouts, and make every regular season game feel like, well, a must-watch event. When you go to FanDuel.com, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. That's bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today, download it and open it, and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Back here on the Bill Squad Show, Jeremy White, Joe Marino, and Jerry Ostrowski, and bringing in a guest once again. We're in our guest phase here as Matt Bove joins us to talk about his series coming up. It's actually underway already, 1 week in. This will be week 2, I believe. Correct, Matt, of your Highmark Stadium Retrospective. The sports director of WKBW joining us on the line here as we just kind of hang out. What's up, Matt? How are you?
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm good. How are you guys all doing this afternoon?
We're all right. We're all right. You know, you've seen this whole series. Of course, you put the whole thing together, and fans are, of course, getting ready for the final season at Highmark Stadium. So we know the inspiration is, of course, the stadium. Mm-hmm. How big of a project did you think you were taking on at the start, and what can Bills fans really look forward to seeing from these 7 episodes you're airing about the history of Highmark Stadium and what really got us to today?
Well, it was daunting for sure, because I'm sitting there, and this was probably in March. I was just thinking we need to do something about the end of this year, this last season inside Highmark Stadium. And naturally, then you think about, okay, how can you do this in the fall? That's when people are really, really into football. The audiences are the biggest in the fall. I'm just like, there's not time. There's just legitimately not enough time in the day to be talking about, hey, the Bills have a matchup this week against the Ravens, and this is what you need to pay attention to. And oh, by the way, here's all the stadium stuff as well. So I was trying to kind of figure out when the right time was. And then I remembered, oh, there's 6 weeks off between mandatory minicamp and training camp. Let's do it then. So it literally started with just me writing down a bunch of names on a piece of paper and going down the list and trying to get in contact with all of these people about, hey, share your favorite memories and stories from inside the stadium. I'm from Western New York, so I'm cognizant that the Bills did not start in the Super Bowl era. There were years before the Bills, so I wanted to make sure that those players and fans and people who worked for the team were included as well. And then we got all the interviews, and we just started kind of putting together different episodes about the stuff that we thought was the most interesting. So it has been months of work, because these episodes, they're each like 22 minutes long, but there's 7 of them. So it's a lot of editing on the back end, and there's a lot of interviews that have taken place, but it has been so much fun to hear the stories and talk to all of these people about their favorite stadium memories. It's honestly been very enjoyable because as somebody, like I said, from Western New York, it's really cool to hear about the little history bits and nuggets that you weren't even aware of. So now it gives me like a really even more complete picture of how special this building was.
Matt, if I can jump in, and thank you for being here. And I loved the first episode. I'm looking forward to seeing the second one tonight. I'm a big process guy, and I would love to know how you even attack this. I know you said you like went through and you wrote down a bunch of names. Was it doing that and hearing about the memories that then allowed you to focus in on how exactly to put together 7 different episodes covering 50 something years? Like how you got to the finished product is something I'd be curious of knowing more about.
Yeah. So thank you for, giving the kind words about the first episode. I appreciate it. So my process was essentially, I want to get all of these interviews done. And I just want to make sure that I ask these people very open-ended questions to let them know and let them take me where they want to take me. Because maybe when you talk to Frank Reich, he doesn't just want to talk about the comeback game. Maybe he wants to talk about something completely different. And sometimes that is the most interesting stuff. So I did the interviews first before I even had any idea what the 7 episodes were going to be. Now I knew, okay, there's probably going to be an episode about like the comeback game, 51-3, some of that kind of stuff. That's going to get brought up. There's probably going to be an episode about the drought and about the Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane era and the beginning. But I wanted to get the interviews done. And then after that, kind of fill in the cracks and kind of piece it together that way. But then what's been really cool, honestly, and like shout out Jeremy because he had us on GR last week. After it started, more people have been receptive to talk because they've seen the momentum of the series. Like so many people on social media have said such kind things, and that's been cool. And like literally last week, I set up like 5 more interviews of people like, oh, I loved the first episode. I would love to take part of it. So now we're trying to figure out how to piece them into the stuff that we've already done. And then there's another layer to it. And this was not something that I was anticipating. I think of the stadium as a football stadium, but there have been legendary concerts there. There has been a Winter Classic there. There has been a USA-Canada game there. There have been countless high school football championship games there. So now I don't want to take away from the Bills side of things, but the wheels are spinning of maybe we get a bonus episode and maybe we put that out there for a rainy day. Maybe that's what runs on Christmas Day. So I don't have to go into work on Christmas. So the process was very much like get all the interviews done, see where it takes you. And then there's been some little nuggets along the way of things that I didn't anticipate talking about that have kind of now made their way into the series a little bit. But you still play the hits too. There's a lot of hits. The comeback game, the 51-3, the snow game, the Patriots game, the perfect game, 1980, 1973. Like we're hitting on the stuff we got to hit on.
That's what I was going to ask, Matt. I appreciate you coming on, and without giving too much away, because obviously you're going to have these on, and people are going to watch and enjoy them and everything. I'm looking forward to it. But is there something other than the obvious that even across all the different eras, the beginning, the Super Bowl era, the drought, that you interview all these people? Is there one thing that surprised you that there was a lot of common between them, that they went back to this one point about the stadium that you were kind of surprised about?
What was interesting to me, Jerry, was that almost everybody I talked to could vividly remember their first time in the stadium. And for some people, that wasn't even the first game there. It was a practice. It was when they get drafted, they walk out onto the field. Jim Kelly shared this great story that I had no idea. When he was a quarterback at Miami, he had to come in and play a half of football because the starter got hurt. So he played his first game at that stadium before he was even a member of the Bills, when he was still at Miami. I was like, I would have never known about that. And for other people, maybe it was before they were with the Bills and they were there as a visitor. Some people were there as fans growing up, or some people were there for their first shift. So that's been cool because I can vividly remember my first moments at that stadium. But, I'm like, okay, I'm 32. I'm not that old. Maybe it's just more vivid to me because it's not that long ago. But as you've talked to people from different generations and eras, they're like, yeah, I remember getting drafted by the Bills and showing up and walking out onto the field and looking at it and walking into the stadium, not knowing what to expect, because from the outside, it doesn't look very grand. It's dug into the ground. And then you get in there and it just smacks you in the face. Or I remember walking out of the tunnel for my first game and all the emotions that hit me. So that's been very cool because that's been one of the constants for almost everyone we've talked to is what's your first moment that you remember inside the stadium? And that usually brings back a pretty positive memory for people.
For people that maybe aren't in the market, Matt, we're talking about your series. They can check it out online?
Yeah, absolutely. So every episode is on WKBW. Well, every episode will be on WKBW.com and our WKBW app after they have aired on television. So, for example, tonight, July 20 or June 23rd, the second episode will run at 7:30 p.m. in Buffalo on Channel 7. And then immediately after, it'll be available in both of those places online. A very common question we've gotten is, can you put the episodes on YouTube? Why aren't they on YouTube? They will be on YouTube, just a little bit down the road. Right now, focus on the website, the thing that like we actually own, and then they'll go to YouTube in a little bit.
Did you have any player when you reached out, you thought you might just get a couple words here or there, but wouldn't stop talking your ear off about whether it's memories of games or ushers or people that were the parking attendants? I mean, these stadiums are small cities once it becomes a Sunday.
Yeah, for sure. Jim Kelly was that way. He had a lot of really interesting stories that I appreciated from his time as a player and then his time being a fan since then. Frank Reich had some great stories. Like the Frank Reich conversation started with obviously the comeback game and some other big games. And then he shared the story that I thought was so poignant. He was like, that building means so much to me. He was like, we stayed in Western New York for really our entire summer. And he's like, every single year I would bring my family to the stadium for the 4th of July. And we would go all the way up to the top of the stadium and we would look out and watch the fireworks over Chestnut Ridge Park. And that was a really special moment that I cherish having with my kids, of, being in that stadium, but not for anything football related, just for the view and looking out over Orchard Park and watching the fireworks on the 4th of July. And then, there's so much emotion that's tied to this. I spoke with this woman, Deb, who has worked in the ticket office like as long as anybody in the organization. She's one of the longest tenured employees. Yeah, I was going to say, Jerry,
I know exactly who Deb is.
So I talked to Deb, and I won't give too much of it away, but we're doing the interview, and you can tell she's starting to get emotional. And I'm not trying to make people cry, but you got to ask questions that you think are pertinent. So for me, the question was just, Deb, what did the Bills mean to you? And watching her just kind of emotions start to pour out, and she just goes, everything, and started to sob. And then I freeze up because, I'm a reporter, but I'm also human. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to make you cry. And there's a bunch of other people who I'm interviewing standing behind us, and now all of them are crying. And I'm like, this is unbelievable. Like that, this means so much to so many people, but it's also the layers to it too. Like she shares the story. I remember my parents going there in 1973 and them taking me to a game. And that has been the thing that a lot of people have shared. They remember going with family and friends. And for a lot of people, family and friends who are no longer with us. So that's going to bring out an entirely different emotion for people because they think back to that moment. So it's been a lot of emotions for sure. A lot of joy, but also a lot of like, wow, people really, really love this organization and really love this building.
Matt Bove on the stadium in a retrospective. One more from me. I was prime time ever, will it be a focus? Because there was like 10 years we did not see the national stage. The national stage not coming to Buffalo. It would be, holy cow, we got a Monday nighter. And now with the season that we're about to have that closes out, I mean, Buffalo is center stage. I mean, the stadium itself has gone from nobody in the league would ever see a game there to, the league is loving to come, hoping they get snow globes, hoping they get fireworks. I mean, it's almost become a little bit more nationally known, if I could say that. Not that it's like an identifiable building, but just, the national football fan knows more about games in Buffalo as this thing closes out.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Now, there hasn't been like there's not a specific episode or part of an episode on primetime, but that's definitely kind of part of the story of the McDermott and Bean era of when I started covering the team. It was 15 1:00 games and then maybe a Thursday game mixed in. And that's what your schedule was going to look like. And then 2019, they get that that Thanksgiving game in Dallas. I really feel like that kind of put them on the map. And then the love started after that. And it's cool because for better or worse, a lot of these big primetime windows have been incredible games, either great wins or just absolute debacles as far as the Bills are concerned. So they always seem to like live up to the expectations that come with that primetime window. It feels like they live in the chaos, and that's an area that they're very, very comfortable in. So that's definitely part of kind of this new wave, and that's going to be what they carry into this new stadium of not this building that, people see once or twice a year. It's, a stadium where one of the premier franchises in the NFL is playing, and you're watching them in a lot of big time windows.
I mean, that goes all the way back to the 90s, though, the thing about the primetime games, because Ralph hated Monday Night Football. He didn't want to play Monday night. And I remember we finally got a Monday night game. I believe it was against Denver at home. And it was this earth-shattering deal that we got Monday Night Football. So, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where that wasn't just because of the drought. I mean, even when Ralph owned the team, we didn't have many primetime games back in the day. It was a lot of 1 o'clocks. And then every now and then you had that marquee 4:30 game. But, yeah, it's been that way for a bit.
And I think, too, and obviously it's dependent on the individual or the circumstance. But a lot of people go back to their first primetime game as a fan or as a player, and they can remember more. I mean, there's just the stage, right? Like, I know we can pour water on it now, and it's really not any different. But I get a little bit more juiced up covering primetime games. I cannot imagine what it would be like as a player. You know, Sunday Night Football week 1 is certainly a lot different than Sunday 1 o'clock against Arizona. It's just like we're humans. Like, it is different. And then to see the full circle of the primetime love, the hard knock stuff, the Hallmark movie. It's incredible what this organization has become over the years. It wasn't like that really for a long time, especially between, Jerry, the time you were done playing and then up until when the drought ended. But obviously it's been nice to be back in this kind of national spotlight the last few years.
Definitely. Matt, I got to ask you about this. It's a tweet that you put out on X from @Matt_Bove on June 16th. Quote, I'm not kidding. The first interview for the entire series was Marv Levy. I called his house, not expecting anyone to pick up, and he answered. He has no idea who I am, but I was grateful he took the time to chat. Tell us about it. We got to hear more about that.
Dude, it was crazy. So, we have, a Rolodex of phone numbers for a lot of these people. So Marv Levy has no idea who Matt Bove is, right? He hasn't lived in Buffalo in a long, long time. He's not following local sports television sports directors in Buffalo, New York. But we have this number. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to call. I'm just going to call and see if anybody answers. And that's always weird too, because I don't love just cold calling people. But I was like, I'm going to call and see what he says. So this man picks up the phone. And I'm like, hello, my name's Matt Bove. I'm with Channel 7 in Buffalo. We're putting together this thing. I was wondering if you would be willing to talk. And he would be like, of course, I would love to talk. When works? And I was like, how about now? And he said, okay, sounds good. So I was like, listen, I have to call you back in 2 minutes. I have to go into our audio booth and I will call you from a different number, but it'll be me. It'll be a Buffalo area code. If I could have 10 minutes of your time, that would be fantastic. And he just, immediately it was him and his wife. And they were sitting there talking on the phone. And as somebody who's from here, Marv Levy, I think I'm a little numb to it now. Like when you're around the current players, you're around the current coaching staff, it's more of a working relationship of just okay, we see each other all the time. We're going to be professional about this. But Marv Levy, I'm like, oh my God, he's answering my phone call. He was so good with his time. And then his wife would interject a little bit too. And it was so sweet because I would ask him a question about what Buffalo meant to him and he would answer. And then she would answer and then she would apologize for interjecting. And I was like, please do not apologize for interjecting. This sweet older woman who's like, oh, we love Buffalo so much. I miss the restaurants. I miss going outside. The weather is so comfortable. And they go off on all these little random tangents that they had. But yeah, it honestly, it kind of set the tone a little bit because I didn't know what to expect. When you have an idea like this, I was very worried about the execution of it, not because I don't trust, the person who put it together mostly is a producer at Channel 7, Julia Skevel. She is as talented of a producer as I've ever worked with. So I trust her wholeheartedly, but I feel like sometimes it's just our job not to screw it up. But then once we got that Marv Levy interview, I was like, I think this is going to be good. I was like, because he opened up so much to talk about it, that it's not one of those things that people, aren't enjoying having the conversation, right? Like you talk to Josh Allen about something that happens in a game and, he's like, maybe he wants to talk about it. Maybe he doesn't. Like everybody has these memories that they cherish at this building. So the Marv interview was great. And then there's a couple other moments where it was like Frank Reich was one that I was working on for a while. And Frank, is a really, really nice guy and has always been very, very good with accommodating with the media, but he's also going through a lot of a life change, moving out to California and becoming the Stanford football coach. So it was okay trying to fit it into this window. Once it finally happened, I was like, oh, this is awesome. This was such a good interview that I'm so glad we were able to do this. And another one like that was Joe Ferguson, because I don't know anything about Joe Ferguson other than the stories that I've heard, people talking about Fergie. And then you pick up the phone and you get in touch with this guy and he's got this thick Southern accent. I'm like, I could just talk to this guy for hours about anything. And he was just talking about the Bills. And I'm like, man, this is good stuff. So Marv really set the tone.
So the show airs Monday nights, Channel 7. You can also pick it up at channel7.com. Final question. We'll send it out on a bit of a lighter note here. We had a comment asking, Matt, you're the director. Sometimes directors can put themselves in a film. Where does the Aaron Rodgers, Matt Bove competition rank on the all-time most memorable moments in the stadium? For those that don't know, you've got a memed video of Aaron Rodgers giving you the old the push aside, like,
yeah.
Did it make it?
Actually, it hasn't yet, but I'm glad you said that because it has to now. Because I have favorite stadium memories they're probably a little bit more sentimental than that. That has just turned into like a running bit that I've had forever. So it's not. Thank you, whoever commented that, for bringing that up, because now I think I have to get it in there. So the backstory here, growing up Buffalo. Thank you for that. The backstory here is before I was the sports director, my first kind of venture into sports was that I was the photographer for Channel 7 on the sideline for games. So the person who had done it wanted to get season tickets with his friends. So he was like, I don't want to shoot games anymore. For me, I was in news at this point. I was like, please let me do anything I can possible to help with our sports team. I'll do whatever you want me to do. And they're like, do you want to shoot the games? I'm like, you're asking me to go stand on the sideline with a camera and shoot football games? That sounds like the greatest thing in the world. Yeah, that's an easy sell. So the Packers are in town. And Jeff Russo at the time was our sports director. And he was like, hey, I need a bunch of video of James Starks. So just before the game, try and get some video of James Starks when he's out there doing pregame warmups. I'm like, okay. So I'm not paying attention in the video, and I'm shooting on my camera a video of James Starks also getting ready to come down the tunnel. As he's coming at me, I just feel someone kind of like push my chest and say, get the expletive out of the way. I have no idea who it is. All I do is feel like a little shove, and I hear that. So I'm like, that was weird. So then, like 5 minutes later, one of the other photographers is like, yo, I just got this video of Aaron Rodgers shoving somebody. I'm like, what? He shows me the video. I'm like, that's me. It's like, what just happened? So he sends it to me. And it has been like a running bit ever since of just like, hey, Aaron Rodgers is not my favorite person. I'm sure he has no idea that this video exists or that I exist, but it has been a nice bit for the year. So maybe that has to get in there. Right now, my favorite memory, like as far as a play is concerned inside the stadium, is the Taron Johnson pick six. There's going to be a lot on that because we got some really good stuff on that. There's only like 7. Were you there, Jeremy, for that?
I was not. My brother-in-law, my father-in-law were there. I was not there. I was not there because, and I don't know how you feel about this, Jerry, how you feel about this, Joe, but I thought my first ever game in the postseason at Highmark, I didn't want it to be that. I wanted it full. Even if I had won the tickets, I would have given them to someone. And instead, my first ever playoff game at Highmark ends up being the perfect game against the Patriots. Yeah, so like to me, it was, if you want to go, anybody, that's great. I need to save it for a full stadium no matter what. So I didn't even try to go to that game.
Matt, was the Aaron Rodgers game in 2014?
Yeah, it was Bakari Rambo.
The Bakari Rambo game. He was on an absolute heater. It's
karma. It's karma.
That's unbelievable that it was that game.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, he really kind of like set the tone poorly with that pregame shove because he had just like, it's crazy to me that I know that he wouldn't be here a lot. He has never won a game in Orchard Park. Like, he has never won a game inside that stadium. That is like a very random little fun fact. And, if this is his last year, unless they play in the playoffs and they come to Orchard Park, like, he'll retire without a win inside that building, or against the Bills in Buffalo, which is pretty crazy.
Very good.
Bakari Rambo plays 29 snaps and intercepted them twice.
Isn't that crazy? And then there was a lot of like other little moments in that game. Jordy Nelson dropped a touchdown, like a deep pass touchdown. And that's the thing too. Sorry to go off like on these tangents, but you start to think back of the years that you've covered the team. The quarterback purgatory thing was always like a very relevant, because it's not wrong. Those teams weren't bad. Like that 2014 team was pretty good. That defense was legit. And Kyle Orton had them playing some pretty good football for a little while. So like that game mattered a little bit. They weren't out of it yet. And then 2015, 2016, those teams didn't really stink either. Like they really did kind of catch this wave of those years being pretty good. And even the drought, right? We look back on the drought now. I think we romanticize it a little bit, which is nuts because of how terrible it was. But there were some moments during the drought that were like really, really fun moments inside that stadium.
Yeah, it always used to stick out to me. The drought was a time where we could say the Packers win, and everybody knew what game it was. Like they won so many games that were just like, hey, remember that time they beat a good team? But yeah, you're right. All right, so Channel 7 every Monday, a new episode, a 7-part. Might go more than that from the sound of this. You might have like 17 episodes by the time you're done. Matt, thanks so much for the time. Looking forward to seeing the rest of the project, and as always, a pleasure to chat.
Thanks, gentlemen. Appreciate you guys having me. Have a good rest of your week.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Matt Bove, Sports Director, Channel 7 in Buffalo, with lots of good stories. He's only begun to tell those. Those are going to air on Channel 7. And again, as he mentioned, they will soon be on YouTube. And you can, of course, check them out at the Channel 7 website. I was playing around there and you click on Bills, and it's going to be right there. You'll find it right where you think you would. All right, when we get back, we got a preview, a little sneak peek, and Mr. Joe Marino's one-year wonder episode coming up about Buffalo Bills history to the last quarter century or so. That's coming up next here on the Bill Squad Show. All right, we're back on the Bill Squad Show. Our thanks to Matt Bove, Channel 7 Sports Director, for chatting with us about his series, looking back the history of the stadium. And Joe's got a little bit of a look back coming up for the Locked On Bills content, and that is one-year wonders. So, Joe, tell us exactly, how that criteria comes to be. And Jerry and I'll maybe give you some of our favorite one-year wonders in the last 25 years of the Bills.
Well, I'm not a very creative person. Let me just go ahead and put that out there. So a lot of my best ideas come from other people. So if you have great ideas, please share them with me because I can turn them into content. And somebody had reached out a couple months ago and said, hey, you should do an episode on one-year wonders. And I said, that's a great idea for something to do in late June, early July. And so I wrote it down. And when you do a daily podcast on the Buffalo Bills all year long, you never stop thinking about different ideas. And so I just keep on writing things down. And so I finally got to the point where it's like, all right, it's time to do this. So I've spent the last couple of days, really the weekend, researching one-year wonders. And I was going to do like a comprehensive one-year wonder thing, but I went from 2024 to 2000, and I had 22 names written down. I said, you know what? That'll be all. That'll be enough for an entire episode. So on tomorrow's Locked On Bills, you will get my 22 one-year wonders from 2000 to 2024. And interestingly enough, we got into one of them being Bakari Rambo. I would not have remembered those details until I was researching this, and then Matt brought that up. And the whole time he started talking about that Aaron Rodgers game, I'm like, was that 2014? Because Bakari Rambo, spoiler, is one of my one-year wonders who he played 4 games with the Bills in 2014. And he came in that Packers game in the fourth quarter. The Bills starting safety was Duke Williams. He gets hurt. He intercepts Aaron Rodgers twice. The Bills win the game 21-13. And the cool thing about this is Rodgers was on a heater. The Packers had won 9 of 10. He had 35 touchdowns and 3 interceptions on the year going into that game. And then Bakari Rambo picks him off twice. And the Bills get a big win. Of course, that year was the Kyle Orton year. And they had that goofy loss to the Raiders in week 15 that took them out of the race. Yeah. But if they would have beat the Raiders, they probably would have finished 10-6 and might have not had as long of a playoff drought as they did. So looking forward to unpacking that all in tomorrow's episode. But Bakari Rambo is going to get 2 days of shine here on Locked On Bills in the middle of June 2024 or 2025.
We won't guess and name all of them because some have to be surprises. Jerry, how about you? Who's your when we mentioned one-year wonder, who pops to mind? I've got a couple. I feel like you guys could guess mine. I got
hashtag the legend of Kiko Alonso.
All right.
It's probably my guy. And here's why. Obviously, and you know this, I'm redundant. I grew up in Philadelphia, so I also have the honor of seeing Kiko Alonso in a green jersey playing for the Eagles. And just some stats, first 4 games of the season, Alonso has 32 tackles, 4 interceptions, 1 forced fumble, and 1 sack. In week 6 alone, he had 22 tackles. And then he just, as Neil Young would say, it's better to burn out than to fade away. But I will say this about one-year wonders. Usually you get nothing in return, right? They have the season and they're gone. At least we got LaShawn McCoy to Buffalo on the trade of Kiko Alonso to Philadelphia, which, again, thank you, Chip Kelly, for having no patience with anybody. And, if you remember, LaShawn McCoy and Chip Kelly got into it. LaShawn becomes a Buffalo Bill, and he gets Kiko Alonso, a former Oregon Duck. So there's the tie-in between Chip Kelly and Kiko Alonso.
You guys want to try and guess the two names that came to mind for me? I mean, you know who I am. You know what I'm obsessed with.
Well,
who are the two names that came? Okay.
I'll pick one. Rocky Top is probably one of them, right? Peerless Price.
No, I didn't think of him. I did love Peerless, though.
I went with the whole thing about receivers, so I guess I'm wrong.
Yeah, it's got to be a receiver.
There's two receivers.
Terrell Owens.
Okay, Terrell. There you go.
Those are both excellent answers. Neither are the ones that I thought of because, yeah, I'll give them to you. One is Emmanuel Sanders. I mean, I loved Emmanuel Sanders. He didn't put up monster numbers, but I've always loved his game, and he was cool. But the one I really thought about was Robert Foster. Robert Foster, who plays in Josh Allen's rookie year, right? And catches the deep ball against Jacksonville. It was this diamond in the rough. Like, what is Robert Foster going to be? And then by the next year, he caught like 10 passes and was gone. There's a hot minute where Robert Foster was what the Bills have in this guy. So those are the two names I thought of for one-year wonders. And I have a lineman too to show my depth. How about Quentin Spain?
Oh yeah.
Quentin Spain, 1 year, Mr. Undrafted. What was his he likes to call himself
undrafted. Yeah, he was like a good prospect coming out of West Virginia, and he was a starter, right, for Tennessee. He comes to Buffalo, signed like a 3-year, $15 million extension, got cut during year one of that.
Yeah.
I remember Joe Buscaglia had said something about that, like in an article that he wrote, and I'm like, what are you talking? This guy just signed a 3-year deal. He's not going anywhere. And then he got cut, and I'm like, okay. I pay attention to everything Joe Buscaglia has to say ever since that moment. So,
yeah,
good call on Quentin Spain. I thought this would just be wide receiver city here.
Well, I do pay attention to other positions.
Well, I feel weird. I had 22 players down, and one of them wasn't Quentin Spain. So I need to.
How about this name? Can I get a spoiler on this name? Linebacker John DeGiorgio.
Yeah, he's on the list. He's on the list. Filled in for Pozluzny that year.
Yes,
he
got
injured.
And he started X amount of games and never played another game in the NFL, I don't think.
Yeah.
Or didn't start another game in the NFL.
No more starts, yeah.
Yeah.
He blew out his knee, if I'm not mistaken. So he was 6 games back the next year and tore his ACL 6 games into 2008, and that was it for him.
Yeah.
So those are the things I'll be sharing on tomorrow's Locked On Bills, stuff like that.
Very good. Very good.
That'll be a good one. That's a must watch.
Yeah. Is there a quarterback? I mean, Orton, right?
Yeah,
was one.
There's some quarterbacks. There's some quarterbacks.
Orton's 1 year.
I mean, obviously, you got it. Probably the poster child of that would be Trent Williams, wouldn't it be?
Edwards.
Trent Edwards.
Trent Edwards, rather than Trent Williams.
Can't stop thinking O-line, can you, Jerry?
Well, that one just that. Yeah.
You say Trent Williams is the next word, right? We don't say anything else.
Right. Trent Edwards. The other Williams that's associated with the Bills, that was the all-time worst first-round draft pick in the history of the franchise.
We'll have some love for Trent Edwards too. Yes.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah. The commenters, then there's like one game wonders. If you really wanted to boil it down to a couple different spots, like who had one game. And anyway, very cool. So, all right. So looking forward to that. That's going to be dropping soon. Joe's Locked On Bills episode. That is the 1 year wonders. You can give that a listen and, check that out. For, we talked Dolphins in the first segment. I wanted to just bring up, this is a very small thing. We've talked the Patriots and what they've gone through and all their changes. We talked a lot about the Dolphins in the last couple of weeks and about Tyreek Hill to open the show. I just wanted to kind of make an observation and ask you guys your thoughts on this. Has this been the quietest Jets offseason that has ever existed? They get Justin Fields, and maybe it's because it's put right up against the Aaron Rodgers back-to-back off seasons, but Aaron Glenn comes in, they say goodbye to Rodgers, and I feel like the Jets have been silent, like a very controlled, non-drama. I don't know if it'll ultimately work for them, but I'm reading about the Dolphins every day. I'm reading about the Patriots every day, and the Jets are just like, zip. I don't hear a thing about them. That's
because Woody's too busy buying Crystal Palace in the English Premier League or whatever it is. He's worried about buying soccer teams.
Saw that. I did see that.
It's about time, man. I mean, this team is at a losing record 9 straight years. They finished last in the AFC East. every year since 2015, except for 2 where they finished 3rd.
Yeah, it's tough.
It's time for the Jets hype trains to be over with. It's an every year tradition where there's some goofy reason to be in on the Jets, and then they continuously let people down. It's like, finally, this is what they needed to do. And I think highly of Aaron Glenn as their head coach. I think that they've got a good leader in there, and obviously it's going to come down to making good personnel decisions, but it's about damn time for the Jets hype train to be quiet.
Well, kind of a question to you guys, and just kind of looking at it from the outside, in is, I know Aaron Glenn was never a head coach before, but this is a copycat league. Everybody copies. We know that. And the Jets go ahead and they take Aaron Glenn, who was a vital piece of that Detroit, culture, so to speak. And we talk about the Jets having to build culture before they build anything else. Was there any kind of discussions in this interview process or the process to hiring Aaron Glenn where he actually had some input and said, look, if you want to do this, you got to keep your mouth shut. We got to do it this way. You never hear about the Detroit ownership. You never hear about them interjecting in things. Maybe he came in with a blueprint and said, if you want it done this way, this is the way we need to do it. So fly across the pond and go buy a soccer team and be quiet and let me do my thing.
Well, I think we learned a lot about Aaron Glenn in the Aaron Rodgers story about how he came to East Rutherford for a meeting with the head coach and general manager, and pretty much Aaron Glenn was like, you're not playing here. This won't be part of it. And I think he really set the tone right then and there, where it's like, I'm not here for anyone's garbage. Like, we're here to build an operation, and we'll see if he can do it. I think he had some stubborn ways with how he ran that Lions defense last year, where they played, I think they were 10% more base defense than any other team. And it didn't matter who their linebackers were. I mean, they were literally signing guys off the street, whether it was David Long or Quan Alexander or Ezekiel Turner. And these guys were playing like that week on the field. So like, committed to man coverage. Like, he's got some stubborn ways about him, but I think highly of him as a leader. I think he's the right type of guy to go to the Jets. Like, I don't know that was at a very attractive destination for like any coach to go to, but I think his ties to playing there helps a lot. And I mean, I hope it doesn't work, but I think it could. I think it could.
I respect him a lot too. I think he's a heck of a coach.
Do you have any faith in Justin Fields? Like, I was going to ask what you thought about their draft, both of you guys. The Jets went offensive lineman with their first pick, and they of course have needed that for quite some time. The thing about Fields is the guy just takes sacks, and there's some explosive plays in there. But if you really start to dig into some of the advanced numbers on NFL drives, and while interceptions and turnovers have kind of come down as coaches and players, and everybody's really smart, the thing that separates the good quarterbacks and the bad quarterbacks often is, and the good scoring offenses and bad scoring offenses, do you take sacks? Because Fields takes a ton of sacks. I feel like that is, it's a built-in trap door. Even though there's a lot of, you might have some things you like, if you're taking that many sacks, you're dead before you start.
Yeah, he's got to get that cleaned up. If I'm a Jets fan, I'm thinking a lot about where Sam Darnold's career is gone, where Baker Mayfield's career is gone, and thinking, all right, maybe this will be the next one of those reclamation stories. I think Daniel Jones with the Colts as well is another guy that, former first round pick that flamed out where they were, and now really 2 spots, I guess, with both these quarterbacks, and getting an opportunity to kind of be the guy. And I think highly of Justin Fields' overall skill set. I really like traits. I like physical upside. He's got all the size, arm talent, running ability in the world. I think it just comes down to playing on schedule with more consistency and managing the pocket better. I think that's a good call out. My concern with the Jets is I don't think they have any meaningful passing game weapons outside of Garrett Wilson. I think highly of that offensive line. I think they got 4 good young pillars, and Joe Tippmann at center. Their last 2 picks have been tackles in Olu Fashanu and Armand Membu. I like those guys a lot. Elijah Vera Tucker's a really good right guard if he's healthy, and John Simpson's serviceable at left guard. It just comes down to, do they have another meaningful weapon outside of Garrett Wilson? I'm not sure they do. Mason Taylor, the tight end that they drafted in the 2nd round, I think he'll be a good player for them, but we're talking about needing some help right now. And then defensively, I think I have a lot of questions about their D-line in general, in particular outside of Quinnen Williams at D-tackle, and who's playing corner opposite of Sauce Gardner. So I think, they had a lot of things to figure out with their personnel, and I don't think they were going to be able to get every answer this offseason. So there's still some holes in this roster, but I think Justin Fields can get it going. I just worry that he has enough help on that offense outside of the O-line.
But again, I would have to imagine they're going to try to, I know it's an ad nauseum comment, but he, like Detroit, physicality up front, run the football a little bit, try to take pressure off them. It's going to be old school football, man. It's going to be high percentage. Once again, you got another team buying into the complimentary football gig, right? I mean, that's what I would have to think the Jets are going to do.
Look, all the good teams do. Like everybody wants Josh Allen to go throw for 5,000 yards and 60 touchdowns. But the best teams in the league understand the nature of complimentary football. You need to control the line of scrimmage. You need to be two-dimensional on offense. That's what the Chiefs figured out with Mahomes. They realized that, hey, we've got to be able to play more consistent all-around ball. Look at the Eagles. They're not a air it out every single play team. The Lions aren't that. The Commanders aren't that. Like the best teams, the Rams, they're very two-dimensional. The best teams have figured this out. And I think that's one of my criticisms for Cincinnati. They haven't figured that out. They want to just run drop back pass, throw the ball over the place, 700 passing attempts for Joe Burrow. Where's it gotten you? Not to the playoffs the last 2 years. You can't play defense. You can't run the ball. There's no physical identity to what you're doing. You got to figure this part out, and I think the best teams are figuring that out. And even Tampa Bay, I thought, is a team that developed their rushing offense last year, and I thought we saw Baker Mayfield had the best year of his career. So, you want these quarterbacks to go out there and pull the trailer and be unbelievable, but when you can play complimentary football around a star quarterback, I think that's where you can be a dangerous team.
Once again, it's the beauty of these conversations. No matter how the game changes, how the rules change, it's still a game of toughness and physicality at some point. You have to be good at those two things, no matter what.
A couple minutes for comments and questions. If you want to fire them up here in the chat, do it. We'll be back in just one moment here on the Bill Squad Show. Jeremy White, Joe Marino, Jerry Ostrowski, wrapping up the Bills Squad Show here. Some of your comments and questions on the chat. If you want to jump in the YouTube chat, like and subscribe. Of course, you can listen to this as part of the Locked On Bills channel, wherever you get your podcasts. But as we went to break, Joe, remind everyone where you placed Baker in your quarterback rankings.
I'm seeing more and more lists coming out, and I'm realizing I might be alone on this. I had Baker Mayfield 5. I'm a 5 quarterback in the league.
So the reason I bring this up is we had a guest on our show last week, maybe Friday. It was a bit of a fantasy football guest, but he laid out the case for how Baker could win the MVP because of the statistical numbers he could put up this year in that division. They're flush with weapons. We'll see. I mean, he threw for 4,500 yards and 41 touchdowns.
Yeah.
I wonder, anytime you lose your offensive coordinator, what's going to happen there. But Baker is, I like the Baker story. I think it's a cool story. He's got, swagger. He's kind of fun. So, I know you think highly of him as well.
But we real quick on that, it's because a lot of people now with analytics and all that, all they care about is numbers. Nobody puts any emphasis on things you can't see. And that's what Baker has on top of numbers, is the things you can't see. And that's what I think so awesome about it.
The guys just play for him, huh?
Right.
Like, what's cooler than a guy that goes to the Rams in 3 days? They win a game in a bad year, and it's just like everyone is going to follow that guy wherever he goes. So, and that's one of the traits that Josh definitely has. Like, you just can't hear enough of it about how guys just want to play for him. Going back to his rookie season, just the way that he plays, the way that a player plays. Jerry, that's something that a lot of players, like you said, people just maybe watching the game like me on my couch. I can't necessarily see the way a guy plays, but you're watching film, you're looking back and like, okay, that's a guy I can count on every day of my life. I know that guy's a guy I want to play with.
There's no doubt. I mean, Baker is the definition of ride or die. He's been that way since he came to Norman, and he was that way down there. I mean, he's that way in the league. If anybody had a complaint about how things were going, a guy that had 4 or 5 OCs in 5 seasons. I mean, anybody had a complaint on how something like that outside of himself, affected his career trajectory, it would be Baker. And you never heard him say a word. He just went about his business. The biggest mistake he probably ever made, and this is where he was at fault for being that type of guy, is when he had the shoulder injury and insisted on playing, and it got him cut. It got him cut. He got cut for doing the right thing. I think somebody one time said that's called integrity, doing the right thing, even if however it affects you, whether it's negative or positive. And yeah, I mean, he's that dude, man. He is that dude.
As we wrap, today is June 23rd. Bills camp starts 1 month from today. So it's the last little bit here before we get to St. John Fisher, get into those practices and start to see what happens. Joe, I know your other episode, another one you just dropped of the Locked On Bills, is about these receivers and how things can get different. It's kind of funny because the receiver conversation was alive, and then what happened, and people are still talking about it. I see so many conversations about receivers because, when you're looking at this team, it's not really about whether or not it's good enough. It's just how will it be different? Because it looks like it will be different this year. It's a matter of how they use them, skill sets. So I appreciated your episode on the receivers, Josh Palmer, Elijah Moore. We'll be eager to see 1 month from today how they start to slot in.
Well, go ahead, Joe, real quick.
No, I was going to say that's one of the favorite parts of getting to training camp for a week is you start to see the vision for how it's going to come together. And right now I'm projecting certain amounts of targets and passing attempts, but we'll see what happens after I spend a week with the team later, I guess in July.
Yeah.
Well, since we're all glossing up Joe and patting him on the back, my actual favorite episode lately was how do you take a record-setting offense and make it better? I thought that was a very good episode. Well, that one you should watch.
All right, gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. 1 month till training camp. Count it down. Our thanks to Matt Bove, who joined us. We've been rocking some guests lately. We'll continue to do that to bring us some more perspectives. And that retrospective series on the stadium has been really fun to watch. Would highly recommend going to watch that, whether you're watching it on Channel 7 in Buffalo or through the YouTube channel. I'm sorry, not YouTube. They'll be on YouTube eventually. It's on WKBW's website. So, live out the final year of the stadium, but get the full story that you need to at WKBW's website or on Mondays. Jerry, Joe, thanks very much. And, see you later, fellas. See you next week. Oh, I'm out Thursday. Don't forget. I'm out Thursday. I've got my 100 holes of golf.
Hydrate, dude. Hydrate.
I know.
Hydrate.
I know. True story. 100 holes on Thursday. My birthday is Wednesday. And I said to my wife, how would you feel about me going to play some golf? And she said, before you play 100 holes in a day? So whatever. Anyway, I won't be here on Thursday. So, gentlemen, I'll miss you, and I'll be back next week. And until then, go Bills.
Go Bills.
Much love. Go Bills.